This event is really a welcoming space for to encourage and advocate for diversity and inclusion, and we really welcome you and invite you to get involved via the chat box function. You can submit your questions for today's speakers, and if you just put Q&A next to it, then we'll know what it's for, and it will go towards the Q&A panel at the end of the session. We have 4 great speakers for you tonight, and I really appreciate them taking time to come along and to share their experiences with us. So without further ado, it's really my pleasure to introduce this evening's first speaker. So Sonay Erten is a recent alumna and a trainee solicitor in litigation and personal injury at a firm in central London. Sharing her personal experiences and the strategies that she has found to be beneficial to promote mental wellness, along with how to support others struggling with mental ill health. So welcome, Sonay.
Thank you, Patrick. So I want to start off talking about my personal experiences of mental illness. In November 2019, I was diagnosed with severe anxiety and depression. This was a shock to me. I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't quite expect to hear those words. In fact, when I was diagnosed, people said to me I didn't look like someone with anxiety and depression. However, getting the diagnosis was what really made me start thinking about my well-being and being more open about my mental health. Fortunately for me, my other half knew more about mental illness than I did and encouraged me to self-refer to the local IAPT. IAPT stands for Improving Access to Psychological Therapies, and it is an NHS service which supports and treats those with anxiety and depression. In a moment, I will talk about how someone struggling with their mental health may look like, so that you can spot these in both yourself and others. Essentially, in my experience, if I didn't have someone prompt me, I wouldn't have got the help I needed, nor would I have learned about the various methods to look after my own mental health. From what I have learned from my own research is that struggles with mental health, especially in the legal profession, are very prevalent. This is in part due to our personality. You have probably heard lawyers be described as type A personalities, and what that means is that we thrive off being busy and working under pressure. We are also more likely to be hard on ourselves, and the effect of this is that it is so easy to get to the stage where we're stressed and overwhelmed. In addition to that, we don't want to admit that we can't take on all the work that is sent our way. Of course, there is a growing awareness in our profession of mental illness, but the more prevalent attitude is to not admit when we can't cope, especially when it comes to junior lawyers. And this is something that we need to change. I have come across a lot of fantastic senior lawyers who are open about their own struggles with mental illness. This has had such a positive impact on me, and I want to do the same. Some of you may have seen that I was on the panel at ULaw's event, How to Succeed as a Trainee. Now, this wasn't an event about mental health, but since my diagnosis has been a large part of my experience as a trainee, I did discuss this. So many students told me that speaking so openly about my mental health made them feel comforted. We need to break the stigma around mental health so that people can talk about it more easily. We are comfortable talking about physical illness, and mental illness shouldn't be any different. And I feel if we can create an environment where people can comfortably talk about mental illness, that will lead to less people getting to the stage where they can't cope. I have come to understand that I have most likely suffered with anxiety since the age of 15, but I was only diagnosed at the age of 29. For that reason, it is vital that mental health be taught in schools and at university so people are less likely to struggle later on in life. Events like today's are brilliant for that reason. Of course, this does not cover all mental illnesses, and mental illness can occur for a number of reasons. But I certainly do believe, at least in my case, that had I have learnt about mental fitness and looking after your mental well-being from a young age, I may not have developed severe anxiety and depression. What I think is so important is to discuss mental well-being itself. So mental health awareness has grown so much in the legal profession recently, especially in light of the pandemic. However, what strikes me is that the conversation still centres on mental illness and what to do when things go wrong. Whilst that is great, and people certainly need that knowledge and support, we need to start talking about mental wellness itself, because the fact of the matter is, If we don't prioritize our mental health, that is how we get ill. After all, a healthy lawyer is a better lawyer. So we all know how we should eat healthily, exercise, drink plenty of water in order to take care of our physical wellness. But we don't make a conscious effort to look after our mental wellness in the same way. So, as a starting point, looking after your physical health also helps with your mental well-being. I have a checklist for myself, which I refer to every day to keep tabs on my mental health. I try to eat regularly and healthily, particularly fruit and vegetables. Make sure to drink enough water in the day and get some exercise. That said, sometimes you do need the odd chocolate or slice of cake. For me, exercise at the moment entails trying to do yoga first thing when I wake up and then go for a walk in the middle of the day, even if it is just for 10 minutes. If I'm feeling stressed or anxious, I will run through my checklist. Am I hungry? Have I had enough water? Do I need to go for a walk or even take a screen break? With that in mind, meditation and mindfulness is something that is invaluable to looking after your mental well-being, as it is proven to reduce stress. Whilst yoga and Pilates is one way of practicing meditation and mindfulness, it can be much simpler than that. For me, if I'm getting stressed, anxious, or irritable, I take myself away from the situation, maybe walk into another room, close my eyes, and listen to birdsong. Now, this is something I've been able to do when working from home. Of course, you can't always walk away and go into another room, or maybe you can't hear birdsong where you are. If you are able to, you can close your eyes for a few minutes and focus on your senses. What can you hear? What can you smell? And what can you feel? Of course, if you're in class or in a face-to-face meeting, you can hardly close your eyes. That would look a bit rude. So in that case, maybe try wiggling your toes. There are other ways of practicing mindfulness as well. For example, when you're eating, eat more mindfully. Think about what you're eating rather than just inhaling it, which is what I tend to do, unfortunately. When you brush your teeth, think about how the toothbrush feels and the flavour and smell of the toothpaste rather than thinking of other thoughts. So I hope I've been able to demonstrate that mindfulness can be practiced in everyday activities. It's literally just a case of taking your mind away from the chattering of your unrestrained conscious thoughts, or as I like to call it, white noise, and focusing on your senses. It is an excellent activity that only needs to take a few minutes away from your busy day, but can make the world of difference. Related to mindfulness is going out into nature. In fact, the theme for Mental Health Awareness Week this year is nature. Now, not all of us have the luxury of living near the countryside, but you can watch the sunset or sunrise, listen to birdsong, listen to the rustle of the trees in the wind, or go for a walk and enjoy the sunshine when it does appear. Luckily today it has. Time spent in nature, in particular in sunlight, boosts serotonin levels in the body. And more serotonin generally means a better mood, so we all need more of that. Also, taking a break in the day to go outside can actually help productivity. Being chained to your desk, believe it or not, is not the best way to work. So do make sure you get away from your desk, even for a few minutes, just to lift your mood and help you work more effectively. Another excellent tip I have for mental well-being is journaling. I began journaling last year and have kept it up every day, even on those days where I've been really struggling mentally and have had no motivation to do anything else. It is an excellent way of getting all the thoughts in your head down onto paper, and it is particularly helpful if you suffer with anxiety for that reason. Reading is also another great way of looking after your mental well-being, especially in an era where we spend a lot of time on our screens. With working or studying from home, you are generally going from one screen to another without the break of commuting. Try and have a time in the day where you do some reading, maybe first thing in the morning, with your breakfast, or at lunch, or in the evening. Just have some time without the screen. Also, reading is an excellent way of broadening your knowledge as well as just reading for fun, which is ultimately excellent for your mental fitness. One method of taking care of your well-being, which I have discovered in the last lockdown, but I absolutely love, is getting creative. This can be taking photos of nature and the sunset, baking, painting, drawing, doing a puzzle, any interest that takes you away from the screen but gets you being creative. A more general tip, but a very important one, is to be honest with those around you about your mental health and your capacity for work. Don't just take everything on and get yourself to a stage where you can't cope. This is something I've been more comfortable doing recently, and it does make a lot of difference. So to conclude on my mental well-being tips, develop your own strategy for looking after your mental health daily. You can use any of the tips I have listed or find some of your own. But whatever you do, develop a routine and stick with it. And most importantly, be honest with those around you. The final thing I want to talk about is about signs and symptoms of mental illness and how to support those struggling. Like I said earlier, I had a lot of people telling me I didn't look like someone with anxiety and depression. There is no look or type for mental illness. So how can you tell someone may be struggling with their mental health? There are lots of signs and symptoms of someone struggling with mental illness. These can range from being tired all the time, depending on caffeine, to being more irritable or more likely to burst into tears. Before I was diagnosed, I definitely was irritable. I would burst into tears in the office. I was tired, couldn't function without caffeine, and had real issues sleeping. Looking back, it was very clear to see I was struggling with my mental health. If only I knew what the signs were. However, no one at work, not even myself, knew the signs. In fact, I recall one person telling me that my life isn't too bad and stop being stressed. The fact that you are all here means that you probably wouldn't say that to someone, but it does bear repeating. Someone may not even display these signs, and people are also likely to hide their symptoms and pretend they're okay. For myself, I tend to talk and laugh a lot to cover up my anxiety. So don't assume that someone is okay. And the best policy is to absolutely not to say to anyone that their life isn't too bad. So the best advice I can give is don't judge anyone and be kind to everyone. You never know who might be struggling. If people see that you are someone that they can trust and someone who won't judge them, they'll be more likely to confide in you. So now, what if someone has confided in you, or you notice someone might be struggling? The best thing is to support them, sometimes simply by being there for them, and being a friendly, non-judgmental ear can mean the world of difference to someone suffering from mental ill health. Simply asking if everything is okay is an excellent way to start. However, it is crucial not to pressurize your colleague or friend or seem too overbearing. For example, instead of calling them to find out if everything is okay, send a message to them, asking if they want to talk on the phone or if they just want to stick to messaging, if that's what they prefer. Should they choose to tell you what is happening at this point, or if you're face-to-face with them, let them talk at their own pace. Employ active listening by leaving a pause in the conversation. This will create a space for them where they might feel it is safe for them to talk about what is bothering them. Whatever you do, always take it at the pace of the person you're talking to and try not to hurry them along. Of course, being a friendly ear can only go so far, and it is possible that you might need to recommend they seek help of one form or another by making an appointment with their GP, self-referring through IAPT, or giving them tips on self-care, which I've already talked about. Whatever happens, signposting to further help is a key skill. Make sure that you check in at a later date with those you have signposted to further support, just to see how they are feeling. They will really appreciate it. I also had a lot of people telling me to get out of my comfort zone or have a sense of perspective. There is no comfort zone with mental illness. It's an illness like any other, and you need to look after yourself to get better. An analogy I've thought of recently is that you wouldn't tell someone suffering with the flu to get up and run a marathon. Of course, building your mental fitness does involve learning about perspective and a bit of getting out of your comfort zone, but you can't do that when you're really unwell. You need rest and support, and so the best thing you can do for someone struggling is to support them. Thank you all for listening. I hope you enjoy the rest of the talks this evening.
That's great. Thank you, Sonay. I think that's a brilliant first session to start us off. I think some really important things there around some helpful everyone being comfortable talking about mental health and being honest as well is so important. But I think one of the things that resonated with me as well was active as well in talking about mental wellness rather than waiting for things. So thank you so much, Sonay.